AJ?
Pharmacist Ben?
That's not how you end a record, dude.
I'm sorry. You know what?
That was cool. That was not good.
Clearly, my eyes are deceiving me because it looks like I'm on the screen with Pharmacist Ben.
Yes, you are the one and only Pharmacist Ben.
This is like.
Yeah, I don't see you though, unfortunately.
This has been a while since we've had one of these, huh?
I think November or so, probably, right?
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Nice to see you. And you know, it's funny, AJ. Maybe it's the lighting in your place, but you always look exactly the same. You don't age. In fact, that picture you sent me, that you look exactly the same in the picture.
You don't age either, man. And I commonly wear very similar, if not identical, things. So I will.
Is that what it is?
You look the same.
Wait, say that again. Say that again. You wear the same clothes?
I often wear the very same thing. So
I like doing that too, actually. But I hadn't noticed that about you. But maybe that is why you're always looking the same, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty.
Because you're dressed the same. Okay, cool. I'm going to start to notice that. But in any case, it's very good to see you. And I thought today we were going to talk about hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy.
Okay, we talked about that once before.
I know, but I thought that was really cute. There was something else. Well, there's another one after the cardiomyopathy. I forgot what that was. Hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy. And then there was something else after that. I forgot.
I don't recall because we do have many topics, but
I love that idea though. Do you know why I love that idea? Because it's so obnoxious and in your face. You know, that poor guy, he's like, what? I can just only imagine. You have hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy. He's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I can't believe it. I can only imagine what the guy must have been thinking. Yeah. That's what they want.
And then he's like, I wonder where I caught that.
Yeah, hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy. And so, you know, what's the point of saying all those things? Your heart's messed up. Dude, your heart's messed up, period. What was this transerythropoietin hereditary amyloidosis You got a messed up heart. What's the only disease?
My body's falling apart.
Period. That's how we want to think about this. That is so important because we have been conditioned to believe something that we don't even know we've been conditioned to believe. The belief's transparent to us. We just assume it. It's automatic. We assume that the rituals of the medical model, where you go in, you take the test, you tell them your complaints, you get diagnosed, blah, blah, blah. They repeat it back in Latin to you. They give you drugs based on that. There's a system in place that is like a funnel almost, like a sales funnel, where you go on the top and you enter into the funnel. You know what sales funnels and social media? That's what they get you. You go on the top like you're a fish. You know how that fish come on the top, and then they go and they get trapped in the funnel. And that's what happens to us from early on. Unfortunately, there's complicity in the media, and there's complicity in messaging, in the education system, and in the culture, everywhere. There's this complicity to keep us locked into this one way of doing things, and it doesn't serve us. That's my whole message. It doesn't serve us because health is simple. Health is simple. It's not complicated. They want us to think it's complicated. It's not. And so I always crack up when I hear hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy, because it just cracks me up that, we allow that. And plus it makes them sound really smart. Oh, it's hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy. Yes, it's a very little known disease. That's crazy. Oh yeah. You haven't seen a case of hereditary transerythropoietin amyloidosis cardiomyopathy in a long time. So it cracks me up.
Yeah. We want to simplify it for folks.
Simplify it. The triangle, even the plane, the 2 points, dirty blood, my body's falling apart, anabolism, catabolism, inflammation, the enemy, keep the enemy out, patch up the gut. There's these basic commonalities to all health challenges, to all chronic diseases, all of them. And if you know what you're doing and you don't fall for the stupidity, and I say fall for the stupidity. It's cultural. It's not stupidity because it's accepted. It's the accepted way of doing business. And by the way, you don't want to do that with nutrition. I talk to people who do that with nutrition sometimes. Allopathic nutrition. Yeah. I have this disease and I take this pill, I just supplement. The body is a system, and everything is connected to everything else. Not just connected, networked. It's not just like the leg bone's connected to the, the hip bone. It's only one thing. It's networked like a spider web. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? You do some networking and IT stuff, right? Don't you do that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
of course.
Yeah. You don't understand the concept of a network where there's all these interacting parts. It's not just boom, boom. It's like a web, like a spider web. You know, in Hinduism, they have this thing called Indira's web or Indra's web.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, and the concept is that all of reality is one big web, and you can't touch here without affecting there. And that's how the body is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's coherent. That's why you can affect changes very rapidly in the body. You can take a pill, and 2 hours later, you're like on another planet, or your pain's relieved, or, your heart stops, or your heart slows down, or whatever it is. You can take a pill and it will get distributed everywhere in the body in like an hour, not sometimes even faster. If you kick something, the reflex test, the signal gets distributed instantly. There's like this coherence in the body because everything's interactive. And so we have a model that says, you got a skin problem, you go to the dermatologist. You got a heart problem, you go to the cardiologist. You got a hormone problem, you go to the endocrinologist. You got a bone problem, you go to the osteopath. An eye problem, the ophthalmologist. Immune problem, the immunologist. We have specialties for everything. It's not how the body works. We're isolating, we're reducing all little parts. It's like we can't see the forest for the trees. You ever hear that saying? We don't see the emergent thing that's happening. The emergent thing that's happening is there's. Can I say bad words on here or no?
This is late night with Pharmacist Ben.
Okay. There's shit getting in the system that shouldn't be getting in the system. Period. And the stuff that's supposed to be in there that's going to help it out is not there. That's as simple as I can get.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. Now, there's all the spiritual and mental, emotional dimensions, but those are also garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. Those are also on all those levels too. So there's spiritual nutrition, mental nutrition, emotional nutrition, spiritual junk food. Okay, I think you know what I'm talking about, probably. And then emotional and mental junk food too. But we're here to talk physical, and it's as simple as that. So I get a kick out of all these Latin names and designations, and I like Latin, and I don't know Latin, but in pharmacy and in the sciences, you study a little bit of Latin, and it's interesting to me how words are constructed. So I get a kick out of it, but it's very disempowering to the average person. Mm-hmm. Very disempowering, and it's not really very kind for the paradigm. Not doctors. I never blame doctors, by the way. Never ever blame individual doctors. There are some that are a little bit arrogant, kind of and condescending, but for the most part, they're beautiful people. They're beautiful people. They really are good people. I have a lot of friends. Nurses are especially awesome.
Yeah.
So
they do try, but the way you explain it reminds us that the American medical system is not the only one that's ever existed in the world, and there are other modalities in India and.
Let me tell you something. You want to hear the sad story, the sad truth, my friend AJ?
Mm-hmm.
This scandal has been going on throughout history and throughout every culture in the world.
Really?
Really.
I mean, Chinese medicine,
all of them. They're all about. They're more herbal. They're more herbal, but they're all about authority. They're all about authority. They're all about. I'm going to fix you.
Come to me,
Come to me, and I'll fix you.
Mm-hmm.
And the herbal thing with the Chinese medicine thing. I like the Chinese medicine thing, but it's more corrective than it is nutritional.
Understood. But
right?
but they do understand the energy.
They understand energy. Yes.
They use the acupuncture and
they understand the energy body. Mm-hmm. There's an energy body. There's a physical body, and then there's an energy body on top of it. And this energy body can be seen in Carillion photography, for example. Mm-hmm. Or the work of Harry Oldfield. If you want to get blown away, get Harry Oldfield's picture books, where he has these devices where he takes pictures of things and he shows you the electrical energy that's coming off of the things, everything, including people.
Pharmacist Ben, last year I went to Contact in the Desert, and I got to hang out with all the coast-to-coast people.
Okay.
And there was a woman taking pictures of your aura.
Yeah.
And you should see the pictures.
That's called Carillion photography, yeah. And so there's an energy body there, and that's involved in healing. And the Chinese knew this, which is pretty advanced. And by the way, you want to hear something really cool? Check this out. So this is where the energy body meets the physical body. And this is where Chinese medicine meets Western nutrition, we'll say, not necessarily medicine, but Western perspectives. My perspective, maybe only mine. But some people like me, I shouldn't say only mine. At the level of the connective tissue. You know how I'm always talking about the connective tissue?
I've heard you mention it once.
Yes, I'm serious about the connective tissue. Aging is a connective tissue disease, or not disease, but connective tissue breakdown or manifestation of a connective tissue breakdown. I don't want to call it disease, but it's the breakdown of connective tissue. Wrinkles, arthritis, osteoporosis, hernias, ruptures, hunched over appearance, scoliosis, all of the things we hate about aging, gum disease, all of the heart disease, all the things we hate about aging is all connective tissue driven. And the connective tissue interfaces with the electrical system. It's how the electrical system is generated. The aura is generated through the connective tissue. So building the connective tissue is the key to everything. Everything.
And I remember you saying that connective tissue interacts with water.
Yes.
To create the electrical.
Yes, it organizes water. It structures water. It creates a coherent water. Whole different animal. We think of water as water. No, water is a very, very fascinating, complicated, complex group of molecules, I guess you could say, a category of molecules. It's not, there's different types of water, all kinds of isotopes of water and shapes of water. And, there's all kinds of things about water. The water in the body is a special kind of water. It's the structured water that occurs via the interaction between water and collagen and water and connective tissue matrix, water in the connective tissue, the collagen, the high hyaluronic acid, the proteoglycans. This is why bone soup is such a valuable food, because it's replacing all those substances. And so building the connective tissue via structuring the water by building the connective tissue. And also, get this, you ready for this? The second thing that structures the water is ionic minerals. And that's one of the things about Beyond Tangy Tangerine nobody talks about. There's ionic minerals in here. They talk about the colloidal minerals, but there's also ionic minerals. And by the way, the colloidal minerals probably have a structuring effect too. So the minerals in general have a structuring effect on the water. And that's the other way. Water is structured via collagen, via polysaccharides, maybe proteoglycans, you could say, but mushy stuff, collected mushy stuff in the
fucoidin.
In the fucoidin-like stuff, absolutely. This is one of the reasons why fucoidin is so valuable, because it helps support all of that stuff. Very, very good call. That's one of the reasons why it's so multifunctional. That's why I love fucoidin so much. It's so multifunctional because it's so foundational.
Briefly, what's the difference between ionic and
ionic is
in a tangy?
Yeah, within the plant material. The way that these minerals are made, they're mined. Longevity owns these mines. Did you know this?
But these are prehistoric plants.
Well, yes, but let me finish here. So they own these mines, right?
Mm-hmm.
These mines are the remnants of millions of years of foliage being deposited. This is what all coals and sediment kind of material contain these kinds of organic substances. In certain areas around the world, there used to be a lot of foliage, such as Colorado, where I live, such as Utah, Wyoming. This is all foliage. And so during the Jurassic period, it's we're talking like tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of years ago. All of this foliage, as it died, it went into the ground, and then it recycled, went in the ground, recycled, went in the ground, recycled, and on and on and on. And eventually, as the stuff piled up on top of each other, as all this dead material piled up on each other, it compressed. And what was remaining in the compressed material was nothing that was able to live. It was nothing that could live. It was the non-living substances, the minerals and the phytonutrients, the chemicals. The living stuff couldn't survive all that pressure. So what was left is the non-living material that makes up a plant. And all of that stuff is like phytonutrients and vitamins and all the stuff in the plant. Think of what a plant is. A plant is loaded with incredible stuff. And all that incredible stuff, particularly the minerals, are left in these mines. We're left in these mines. You could dig them out today, and you could put them in water. And that when you're digging them out and putting them in water, what you're digging out is the remnants of foliage from 100 million years ago or 75 million years ago. Does that make sense? You follow me? Now, here's the thing. So there's all kinds of substances in there. We talk about the minerals, but there's all kinds of substances in there. There's fats, there's amino acids, there's phytonutrients, there's flavonoids and phenols and various kinds of antioxidants. And it's just packed, absolutely packed with incredible nutrients. The most well-known are the colloidal minerals because that's what got all the press, and Doc kind of pushed the colloidal minerals, but there's all kinds of stuff in there. Incredible nutrition. And one of the nutrients are, to answer your question, one of the nutrients are ionic minerals. We talk about the colloidal minerals. There's also ionic minerals. The ionic minerals are minerals that dissolve in water. Colloidal minerals are minerals that suspend in water. You follow me?
Okay.
Is it making sense?
Yes.
Okay. The stuff that suspends in water has a different characteristics, a different electromagnetic profile than the stuff that dissolves. The stuff that dissolves interacts with water in a way that the stuff that's colloidal doesn't. And the stuff that's colloidal interacts with water in a way that the ionic minerals don't. They're both valuable.
And which is an example of an ionic?
Magnete? What do you mean? It's not listed. The way they list the minerals here is just the minerals. They don't tell you if it's ionic or colloidal.
Okay, but they're both coming from the same source.
Same place. As I'm telling you, these things have everything in them. Vitamins, fatty acids, everything. Absolutely everything. Because think of what a plant is. What's a plant? A plant is a bunch of great chemicals for your body. Adaptogenic chemicals, nutritional or molecules, not chemicals, but molecules. And you're getting the mother load. You're getting a dense concentration of all of these things. You can see how healthy this stuff is, and it is incredibly healthy. It's that material, that compressed material, is like the essence of nutritional health. The essence of it. It has everything, and it's absorbable, and it's pretty darn cheap, relatively inexpensive, and it's incredible. It's what's in the vegetables that we eat, except it's more concentrated. It's the essence of the vegetable because there's no vegetable material. There's no fiber left and there's no water left. It's the essence of it, and it's so nutritionally valuable. This is why, in my opinion, this is such an amazing product, because it contains that. It contains the mother lode of essential nutrition. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's amazing stuff. And I use it in my skincare products. I use it all over the place. They're ionic mineral. I use more of the ionic minerals than the colloidal minerals. The ionic minerals, they conduct electrical charges in a way that they can support cellular electricity. In fact, they can support mitochondrial electricity, and that's a little bit heady. But the fact is, mitochondria, which you've heard of, I'm sure these days, it's mitochondria in the news.
ATP.
Right, ATP, right? Mitochondria are especially susceptible to damage because they're constantly converting sugar into energy. And there's a lot of highly energetic processes that are going on. So they're very susceptible to damage. And the ionic minerals are specific for helping protect the mitochondria from damage, among a zillion other benefits. That's just one.
Okay, Pharmacist.
These things. Yes, I need to.
Go ahead.
I'm looking for my H2O. Go ahead, talk to me.
Well, before I get into it, and because
do we have listeners, any viewers here that want to talk?
Yeah, we've got viewers, and
before
we get into it, I just want to say hello to Becca Dukes, who remembered our trip last year.
Is Becca on?
And then Juan on YouTube says Ben is such a great guy. Texas Hill Country says water has a memory too. And It's a Beautiful Life is just giving you hugs and prayers and all that other good stuff.
Oh, wow. Thank you, everybody.
Our buddy Bruce is saying hi to all the night owls. But in particular, since you mentioned the word, I'm going to ask his question first. Joseph on YouTube says, can you discuss the new trend regarding eating sugar to lose weight?
I haven't heard of the new trend, but I can tell you that if you eat plain sugar, like sucrose or glucose, even if you can get it like a, diabetic glucose, it's a lot better than eating a Cinnabon. And if you're used to eating Cinnabons and you get your sugar high from straight sugar, you probably will lose weight. Does that make sense?
No, not in the slightest. Why don't you go into it?
Okay, so Cinnabon has way more sugar than you would eat if you ate it by the spoon because they disguise the sugar. Because your brain will get a hit of sugar even if you don't taste it. So sugar is disguised. They use other things like salt. You ever wonder why there's salt with sugar?
Yeah.
They could put more sugar.
More sugar, yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay.
so that's number one. Yeah.
So you're saying, so one thing you're saying is you're actually. Why don't you continue?
You're not getting the combination of sugar and fat. The combination of sugar and fat is a deadly combination. The combination of fat and sugar. The sugar opens up the cells, and then the fat, the triglycerides, can go into the cells much more readily. So the sugar and fat that's the worst combination, sugar and fat. If you're going to do sugar and fat, if you want sugar and fat, do sugar or fat. But if you do sugar and fat, that's really the biggest problem. Think of all the foods that are sugar and fat. Pretty much all the really, really deadly foods for you are sugar and fat.
Did you say ice cream?
Yeah, ice cream is a big one.
I
know it's funny because ice cream is such a popular food. It's like I feel like the Grinch saying anything bad about ice cream, but it's really a horrible food because of the combination of sugar and fat.
Okay, sugar and fat. Sugar. So the Cinnabon and the
Cinnabon is sugar and fat and dough and think of what think of what it is. It's enriched flour, which is like a deadly food on its own, probably. I mean, when you eat enriched flour, you're eating flour that doesn't have the nutrients, but they put a few back in. They take the nutrients out of the grain and they put a few back in. Not to mention the fact that you're getting a little bit of rancid oils in your grains. There's like 2% oils, small amount of oils in there. So between the rancid oils and the enrichment, where they take the good stuff out and they put a smattering of nutrients back so you don't drop dead, right away. That's the flour, and so you got to deal with that. Then who knows what they're spraying on the flour, so you got to deal with that. And then you've got I don't even know how to make a Cinnabon, but you've got probably 20 teaspoons of sugar, 25 teaspoons of sugar. There's no way any human being could ever eat 25 teaspoons of sugar.
So you'd be limited if you decided to take.
If you're eating a Cinnabon a day and instead you have 3 teaspoons of sugar a day and you get your sugar high that way, you're going to lose weight for sure. Now, I don't know if that's what this diet's about. I've never heard of this.
Joseph, is that what you're saying? Please clarify. So at any rate, is there more?
Yeah, what more problems with it?
Yeah, because you were.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's more problems with it. There's glycated end products.
More reasons that the sugar might help.
Yeah, the sugar is glycated. You got all this distortions between the proteins in the bread and the sugar in the Cinnabon. Those are advanced glycosylated end products. You're ingesting AGEs. You're ingesting glycosylated end products, which is going to enhance or increase your glycosylation, your sugaring. It's terrible. Cinnabons are terrible. And I don't want to be the guy ripping on Cinnabons, but, pick your poison. If you're going to do sugar, do a teaspoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of sugar for sure. Do honey. Now, honey's got its own problems. Fructose is a real problem, but honey's packed with nutrients, at least, especially, good honey, quality honey, and, I don't know about the cheap honey. And now they've got fake honey, I guess. Like where they use corn syrup, they get it from China, fake honey. I don't know if they still have that. That was a thing.
Yeah, I don't want to name a brand.
All right, does that help? Did I answer his question?
I think he didn't follow up. He said thanks. Okay, so Bruce says it's a different John. Bruce says I might be mistaken, but did I hear Mr. Pharmacist Ben say that you can smoke your EFAs?
That's like that game of telephone. Let me tell you why. What I did say, you'll laugh. What I did say was EFAs get turned into endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids
Right.
are a class of
Right.
molecules that acts like,
Right.
phytocannabinoids, tetrahydrocannabinoid or cannabinol, which is THC, right? So marijuana contains versions of very, very fundamental hormones called endocannabinoids. These are very, very fundamental hormones. And guess what these hormones do? They relax you, they increase your appetite, they improve sensuality, they all the things these people smoke pot for. So a case could be made. I haven't seen any studies or any proof or anything, but if you understand the chemistry, a case could be made that our collective love of the marijuana plant is a sign of endocannabinoid deficiency that we are self-medicating to get.
Mm-hmm.
Endocannabinoid deficiency follows essential fatty acid deficiency because essential fatty acids are how you make endocannabinoids. So if you're not supplementing with EFAs, it's very difficult to get enough from food. You may be suffering from an endocannabinoid deficiency, in which case you might find yourself smoking pot or liking pot or wanting more pot. I just brought the point up that EFAs can help with that endocannabinoid deficiency, thereby reducing the desire, if you wanted to reduce the desire to smoke pot. And that's what I was saying. But that somehow got turned and you can smoke your EFAs.
Because I've also heard you say that smoke does not belong in your lungs.
Smoke does not belong in your lungs. There ain't no kind of smoking that's good for you. It is one of the most god-awful things a human being can do to themselves. Think about it. This precious area, you want it pristine. You want this clean and pristine. To put heat and tar and nicotine, that's some serious self-abuse.
I remember when I used to run 6 miles a day, I used to say that your lungs can be clean in 6 months.
They regenerate pretty quickly. Yeah. Lungs do. And you can damage them beyond repair, if you keep smoking. But that's what I always say is between cigarettes, your lungs heal. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you are smoking pot or cigarettes or vaping for that matter, gargle with some Beyond Tangy Tangerine between. I'm not kidding you.
I know you're not kidding, but it just sounds funny.
Gargle, get it on your esophagus and your mouth and your lips. Do you ever see anybody with lip cancer or tongue cancer or,
No, thankfully, no.
No, thanks. I know. I mean, it breaks your heart to see stuff like that. And I've seen it, and Val Kilmer, Val Kilmer, the whole thing.
Really? Is that how you died?
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. I don't know if he smoked, but he had esophageal cancer, which is one of the worst cancers. I think, he had voice box cancer of the voice box or something, vocal cord cancer, something like that. Anyway, this whole area is very delicate all in here. They tell you if a bear is like attacking you, you cover this area up because this area is you want this operating nicely. You don't want anything going on in there. In fact,
a rat.
What's that?
If you corner a rat, you have to protect them.
Yeah, animals know that this is the area. This is the most vulnerable area. You want to be very, very loving in this area. And if you're smoking, there's like this implicit message of anger. It's heat, it's hot, it's fire. It's going right in there. To me, it represents anger. Self-anger, self-hate. And I would, if somebody's smoking, they don't care about you. They're if they're going to do that to themselves, can they care about you? Your health. That's why when people walking down the street, they smoke. They don't think of, somebody has to breathe it. Now it's a little different. Now you remember when we were growing up? I don't even know when you were growing up. Everybody smoked everywhere. It was awful.
Yeah, restaurants, bars,
people in their cars,
movie theater.
I've had people tell me that their parents used to smoke in the cars with the windows rolled up with the kids in the back. And the kids now got this asthma and wheezing all the time
in the hospital waiting room.
Oh, did I tell you that story?
Well, I mean, I've seen it, but yes, you did.
Dude, I told you that story.
Tell it again.
When I was had an internship at neonatal ICU and peds ICU, right, where the neonates and peds ICU, where the newborn babies are born crippled, blind. With no intestine, just horrible, horrible places. Oh my God, it was awful. And so I would work there every Sunday, and I liked to watch football back then. I was a Raiders fan back then, and I would go, and I really liked football. I really liked the Raiders, I remember. And it was Sunday, and I really wanted to watch the game, and I would go in there, and I would go in the room, the TV room, and there would be women and men with their newborn babies, newborn neonatal ICU, smoking. And the room in the hospital was filled with smoke. It was like a cloud. I couldn't even see the TV. It was so filled with smoke. And the babies right by their side in the hospital. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think you should take Becca's recommendation. Don't smoke. Smoke your salmon.
I like that. That's clever. All right. Well, let's answer some questions because it's getting to be late here.
Oh no. Well, you know what? The other day you kind of mentioned that you had something you wanted to get off your chest. So I'll give you a chance to do that first if you still.
I don't have any idea what I said. What I was going to get off my chest.
Right.
I do vaguely remember that, but that was then.
Okay, so I got a couple questions here, and I think two of them maybe you can kind of mix together.
Yes, sir.
One is AFib, and the other one is postural orthostatic tachycardia.
Whoa, you had to roll. You had to say that. Postural orthostatic tachycardia. All right, that's POTS. Do you ever stand up? Do you ever lift weights when you're tired or drink a bunch of coffee and you're a little woozy? You know, you do your deadlifts, your squats, and then you get up and you're a little woozy. Or do you ever bend down to pick something up and stand up and feel a little woozy?
Yeah, well, the low blood pressure.
Yeah, all that. That's
coming out of
called hypotension.
Okay.
Hypotension. Low blood pressure. The way blood pressure is controlled in the body requires a lot of valves have to open and close. Think about the body, the circulatory system, right? When we talk about health, the health of the human body is really not about medicine. It's about engineering. And there's an aspect of engineering called fluid dynamics. With me?
Yes, I'm listening.
And how fluids move in the body, when you think about it, there's 50,000 miles of blood vessels, right, in the body. How does fluid move in all the different places? There has to be coordination. Things have to open and close at just the right places, right? And so, you following me? There's valves that have to open, and because the whole system, if one part's not working, nothing's going to work because everything is depending on coherent movement of fluids. So if valves are not opening and closing appropriately, fluids don't move appropriately. Usually what happens is the blood is sticky and inflamed, and this kind of slows everything down. This is why I was talking about dirty blood. The organ or the gland that's responsible for controlling, think about how much control there has to be. There has to be some master plan here to have all the valves opening and closing at just the right time. Do you understand the synchronous nature of everything, how it has to happen? Every time you stand up, you create an entirely different fluid dynamic map. The fluids flow completely differently. Every time I go like this, every time I stand up, right? Or lie down. The body has to adjust for that. Gravity and all of these forces are at play in determining how the blood flows, and there's incredible control over that. And it's all controlled from one major gland. First of all, is that making sense?
It makes sense.
There has to be a master plan to coordinate how everything opens and closes so the fluid doesn't back up. Think of what's happening in the body. The fluid has to constantly circulate through. Dude, sit with that for a second. You know what I'm saying? This 5 liters of blood have to somehow circulate through 50,000 miles of blood vessels in this perfectly coordinated way. How is this happening? Of course, screw-ups are going to occur if we muck up the system, because this is a perfect system. And because we mucked up the system, it's not, but theoretically it should run perfectly, and it does in babies and in kids. So the gland that's responsible for the master gland that's responsible for all this is the adrenal glands, and probably the kidneys too. The kidneys and the adrenals. The adrenals are the adrenals. They're above the kidneys. So they're they have some similar things, some overlap in their functionality. And both the kidneys and the adrenal glands play a role in controlling how the fluids flow. Okay? If you're drinking a lot of coffee, if your adrenal glands are stressed from stress in your life, or you're taking a lot of drugs, or your adrenal glands are beginning to become not operate functionally, that control system is not going to work. That control system is going to go awry. The adrenals will lose their ability to control things. Okay? And then when you stand up, instead of your body adjusting so you don't know the difference, all of a sudden you're going to get a big drop in blood pressure. You're going to get dizzy and woozy. To make up for that drop in blood pressure, the heart will start to pump really fast. You with me? You're nodding your head, but I don't know if you're with me.
Yes, I'm getting it. Go ahead.
Okay. So to make up for that drop in blood pressure, now all of a sudden the tissues aren't getting any blood, right? So to make up for that, the heart pumps really fast. Okay? So what does this mean? Postural, you change your posture. Orthostatic, ortho refers to your bones and your connective tissue. I'm pretty sure static means it stays the same. So instead of the body adjusting, things are staying the same. The body's not adjusting correctly. So you postural, orthostatic. That means you're not adjusting correctly based when you change your posture. Tachycardia, fast heart syndrome. Postural, orthostatic.
So they just describe what happened to you. Yes, what's going on right back to you.
Always a description. Right. Always a description. It'll help you. That's what I know. I have that. What do I do about it? You know.
I know when I stand up, my heart raises.
Orthostatic tachycardia.
So you're saying you got to get the adrenals working well.
Your adrenals are jacked up because you're drinking too much coffee and you're under a lot of duress and you're eating too much sugar and the system's mucked up. So what's the biggest reason why the blood circulates? Obviously there's a lot of reasons, but the most important reason.
Because it's bringing oxygen to the cells.
Bingo. Oxygen. Bingo. That blood is a lot of things, but oxygen is the main thing. So what do you do, first of all, for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome? You breathe. And I'm telling you, breathing, it seems crazy that breathing, we're so conditioned to believe that this is such a high-tech process. Breathing is the most important. It's pretty much the only, but it's certainly the most powerful way to hack into your neurology, to hack into your nervous system is through breathing. So when you breathe before you stand up, or if you practice breathing anyway, if you just oxygenate correctly, that's not going to happen. So that's the first thing you want to do. And that's, by the way, for atrial fibrillation. Now, oxygen is a little tricky. I'll tell you why. It's not quite as simple as breathing. Yes, you got to breathe. But the blood is carrying the oxygen. And if the blood is either inflamed itself or it's trying to get through pockets of inflammation, it's not going to be able to deliver its oxygen payload, even if you're breathing. So that's where addressing the circulatory system is really, you got to do that. I don't want to say first, because you got to breathe too, but you got to do that with it. You got to make sure you're working on the whole circulatory system. And that's where the whole digestive thing comes from. The circulatory system gets mucked up through food and sugar and stuff you inject, but assuming you're not injecting. And that's why I've always said you don't want to ever inject unless you absolutely have to inject. So, injections are playing with fire. And any time a government says, authority tells you have to inject this because other people, that whole story, that
you're being selfish if you don't
dog
inject.
Won't hunt. No, they say that dog don't hunt. Right. That doesn't fly. Right. Sorry. You're not going to maybe to the public you can spew that stupidity, but anybody who understands how the system works, that ain't going anywhere.
Okay, you and I have had our talk about the AFib in the past, and
so AFib is the heart moving fat out of beat. The heartbeat.
And just to preface,
yeah,
we all have been trained by Dr. Wallach to consider it a nerve issue stemming from the osteoporosis of the skull. Now,
I don't want to. Here's an osteoporosis.
We don't need to. But what I'm saying,
I want to say that I want to address that osteoporosis of the skull, the whole osteoporosis thing. Osteoporosis of the skull and softening of the bone is a function of something else. Osteoporosis of any kind is a function of toxicity. Why? Excuse me, and malnutrition. Because one of the mechanisms for buffering acid is calcium from the bones. And so when you're toxic and you're producing lots of acid is a metabolic waste. Acid, it's a kind of generic term, metabolic waste is acidic, put it that way. So when we're acidic, it's a sign that the body is under duress. There's a lot of metabolic waste being produced, and the body has a mechanism for buffering the acid, and that's the calcium in the bones, among other things, but that's the calcium in the bones. The bones become osteoporotic secondary to toxicity. Nutritional deficiencies also involved. So the real issue isn't the osteoporosis of the skull, it's the toxicity. Again, there may be osteoporosis of the skull or osteoporosis anywhere, but we want to look at the system, the entire system, the head to toe part, not the skull, not the bone, the head to toe system. It's acidity, it's toxicity, it's a lack of nutrition, it's dirty blood. It's not one area. The heart is very dependent on oxygen. In order for all of this stuff to happen correctly, there has to be oxygen in the blood. The heart is super dependent on oxygenation in the blood. Once you get into inflammation in the blood through leaky gut, everything bad happens, including the heart jiggles around. That's what atrial fibrillation is. Instead of it beating like boom, it goes like jiggles. The electricity doesn't flow appropriately because the tissue's inflamed. It's very simple. It's arthritis of the heart. It's the same stuff. The same breakdown occurs everywhere. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do.
So if you attribute a cause of something, with the exception of the digestive system, because you're putting stuff in, that's the one exception. If you're attributing a cause of a health challenge that can't be attributed to a syndrome, to multiple health challenges, you're being too reductionistic. So yes, osteoporosis of the skull is probably, it compresses things, and there's probably, that's probably a thing. But how are you going to correct osteoporosis of the skull?
Fix the gut.
Yeah, you got to go back to the system. You got to do everything.
Fix the gut, and then get the nutrients that your body needs to.
There's probably some osteoporosis of the skull involved. So, but what do? You have to go back to the big picture, the big system. Mm-hmm. If you can't treat something directly, you're not in the right place. So if you say osteoporosis of the skull, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. How are you going to do that? You can't treat that. You have to work on the system. You have to work on the gut. You have to work on the acidity. You've got the toxicity. You got to work on the nutritional deficiencies. You got to work on the oxygenation. You got to work on the dirty blood. You got to work on the system. This is what I'm telling you. These are generic answers to a whole spectrum of fruit problems. You like my little metaphor with the fruit? You got all kinds of fruits, but you got the soil.
You got to take care of the root.
That's the root.
I think the disparity, and I've talked to Doc about this directly after a show with you, and he specifically said, and it's not our viewers the folks who are watching us right now want to know, but I definitely take phone calls from people and talk to people who absolutely don't want to know. They just want the pack.
Yeah, I know.
Give me the pack.
I know.
I don't want to know.
I get that. You know what? I'm never going to do that. And I'll tell you why I'm never going to do that, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm never going to do that because I don't want to be anybody's authority. I don't want to be that guy who says, do this, do that. That's not what I do. I tell you what's happening in your body. I don't want anybody to tell me to do this, do that. I don't want to be telling. And I know some people like to be told what to do. I don't want to tell anybody what to do. Secondly, it's much more complicated than a pack. And so you need to have people's buy-in, not just doing it because not because you told them to do it. They got to be bought in. They got to be part of the process, because it's not just taking a pill. That supplements are supplements, right? What does a supplement mean? It means you add to. You have a supplemental income. Do you want to live on your supplemental income, AJ? No. Of course not. But you need a supplemental income. You'd be crazy not to have a supplemental income, right? That's what nutrition is. It's supplemental because our food is awful, and there's no way to get what you need from food. So there's always going to be a role for nutrition. There's always going to be a role for the basics of nutrition, and that's always going to be important. But until you correct everything in the system, the blood and the digestive system and the metabolic system, the blood sugar system, it's going to be very difficult. And if you even have to start working on the stress levels, the adrenals, even though I've kind of whittled down the triangle to 2 points, you really should, to do it right. Those are all parts of the system that you want to work on. When you hear about osteoporosis of the skull, there's nothing you can do about that.
No, I understand. And I like what you said. I just want to add to it. Nutrition is the body's side hustle.
No. No, nutrition is the body's. The body's main job is to get energy. The body's main job is to get energy. And when I do talks in Australia, not in Australia, but on Zoom for Australians.
Right?
And they are so sweet, Australians and New Zealanders. They're so nice. They're just the nicest people. But they are in a world of hurt. Mm-hmm. And wherever there is free medicine, people are in a world of hurt. Canada, Europe, and soon to be here, and then and New Zealand and Australia. And so one of the things they asked me is, what are vitamins? What are vitamins? And I had to kind of pause, and I had to say, I can see why you would ask that. We're so used to hearing about them. And I don't know if they said what are vitamins or what are supplements, what are nutrients. I forgot how they said it. But basically the point was, what are these things we're selling? What's the point of it? They didn't know what the point of it was. So I had to take a step back and say, what's the point of it? What's the reason we take micronutrients? What's the reason we take any nutrition? If I had to ask you, I'm from Mars, and I asked you, what would you tell me?
I would tell you that our body has a lot of functions, and it needs these substances to produce, to make the chemical reactions in the body work.
How?
By creating energy.
By how do you create that? Energy? Can't be created or destroyed.
Using these substances to manufacture energy in the body.
How do the substances? How does that happen?
Well, we have certain, I can't call them organs, but we have certain complexes in the body that will take these and turn them into energy.
Just boom, like magic?
We'll take these and convert these substances into energy. Don't embarrass me.
I'm
joking. There's millions of people watching.
No, listen, there's millions of people watching. But it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question because we know about, like, if these guys ask me, what am I going to say to them? I have to have an answer for them. Why am I taking these? Because they get turned into energy. It's not going to fly. I got to say something that they'll understand. Get turned into energy. How does it get turned into energy? I can't say that. So this is what they do. And this was Dr. Wallach's brilliant insight, by the way. This is a brilliant insight that he had. And even though he didn't frame it the way I'm going to frame it, but it was, in essence, this is what happened. This is what he was doing. You have two kinds of nutrients. You got nutrients that contain energy. I'll tell you if you really want to know how they're contained, I'll tell you in a second because it's really cool. And then you have nutrients that carry energy. Okay? The transport, piggyback, ferry it. The containing nutrients are called macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. They contain energy in bonds. And this is really a very fascinating phenomena. And it gets people very confused about chemistry, but it's all about these bonds, which don't really exist. They're hypothetical. There's no real bonds anywhere. But you've seen the little line C. You've seen those are called bonds, right?
The electrical charge that keeps them together.
That keeps them together, but you see them in drawings. There's like a line.
And yes.
Right? So
yes.
Here's my point. The line represents a magnet that's been pushed together. Okay? You ever take two magnets that don't want to be together and you push them together?
They spring apart.
Right. A bond is two magnets that don't want to be pushed together, that have somehow overcome that force. And now they're together, but it's a very tenuous bond to one degree or another. The two magnets, they're like, have you ever done this where you hold them and you can feel the energy in between
Absolutely.
them? Right? That's what a bond is. And what happens if you let go all of a sudden?
They spring away, yeah.
That's energy. That's all chemistry is. I just told you chemistry, organic chemistry. I just explained it to you. It's all just magnets being released. And so foods, what we call foods, protein, or what we call macronutrients, these days, it's a whole nother story with the ultra-processed foods. That's a whole nother story. What we call these proteins, fats, and carbohydrates especially. And by the way, fat is a carbohydrate, and protein is a type of carbohydrate, except it has a little twist to it, a little nitrogen. But they're all basically carbohydrates from an organic chemistry perspective, and they're filled with magnets, filled with bonds. Are you following me?
Yes.
To the extent a food has energy, a protein, fat, or carbohydrate, is the extent it's going to have these magnets. It's going to have more or less magnets. When you eat a food, the food gets processed, and the magnets stay intact. Most of them. Some of them get broken down, but most of them stay intact. The really important high energy ones. Those are the sugars, the carbs, and to a certain extent the fats. The fats get handled a little bit differently, but the carbs. Then they go into the system, and by the way, protein gets turned into carbs eventually. Many protein amino acids enter into this carbohydrate burning machinery, we'll say, and all of this gets fed into the cells, and then it gets fed from the cells into the mitochondria. Now, a little bit of energy is released inside the cell, but the mother lode of information or of energy is released in the mitochondria, and when it's released, it has to be carried on things, copper and magnesium and B vitamins. And these, what we call vitamins, are the carriers of the energy in the chemical reactions. So you can't just have crazy amounts of energy, just like a bunch of magnets flying all over the place, releasing energy. Somebody has to harness that energy and carry it and deliver it. If you don't have micronutrients, what happens is you've got these magnets exploding everywhere. The body doesn't like magnets exploding everywhere. When magnets explode everywhere, it causes damage. It wreaks havoc. It causes inflammatory problems. It causes diseases. It causes cancers. So what we've created today is and this is what Dr. Wallach noticed, is that we're all getting plenty of protein, fats, and carbohydrates, but we're not getting the micronutrients. So we're not able to use the magnets as they're exploding, and the magnets just explode willy-nilly. Now, a lot of those magnets get trapped, or the energy from the magnets gets trapped in a suspended animation form that we call fat. And that's one of the things that happens. But a lot of it just goes willy-nilly and starts to destroy your blood vessels and your collagen and your joints and your bone and your skin. This is how we age. Micronutrients allow the body to make more efficient use of all that released energy. The vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids, and the fatty acids carry energy in the form, by the way, of electrons, of pieces of energy. That's the form if you're a physicist. So the reason why micronutrients are so important is because they carry electrons, electrical energy. And by the way, I don't want to get all physics here, and we're going to run out of time. It's all about electrons. At the end of the day, and I don't want to get too wonky, but it's about electrons. And that's why grounding, walking barefoot in the sand is so, or in the mud or in the dirt or in the grass, is so beneficial, because you can actually get electrons to your feet, through the soles of your feet. Did you know this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Grounding.
Grounding all the time.
Grounding. That's why people go to the beach. That's why people like nature. Nature's filled with electrons. That's why you want to eat electron-rich foods, fresh foods.
That's why people pet their dogs. Apparently, the animals are giving off electrons.
I didn't know that. Okay, I can see that. That's a new one for me. Yeah, thank you. But that's why people have dogs, because when you have natural things that don't have a lot of that are using their bodies correctly, have healthy electron flow. And by the way, it's one of the reasons why you want to be out in the sun. The sun, photons, sun streams out photons, gets converted into electrons. That's called the photoelectric effect. And we are actually solar beings in that way. And by the way, this is kind of cool. And it's the last thing I'll say.
No, you got more to say.
That's the last thing I'll say for today. This is really cool. The photons from the sun get converted to electrons. But remember, we said the electrons are carried, right? The electrons aren't just floating around as free electrons. They're carried on things. They're carried on micronutrients. Guess what the micronutrient that carries electrons from the sun? Electrons that are converted from photons from the sun. You'll never guess. So I'm not going to, but it's interesting.
Wait, give me a second. The particular micronutrient.
What is a particular micronutrient that is especially charged with, no pun intended, carrying the electrons that have been converted from the photons that came in from the sun?
Phosphorus.
Not a bad guess. And maybe some, that may actually happen, but it's mostly sulfate. Sulfur with oxygen. It's a form of sulfur called sulfate. And this is one of the reasons why fucoidan is so valuable. And I will leave it at that, and we can elaborate on the next call.
So you can't take another question, huh?
Is there another question?
Yeah,
it's already an hour, dude. Come on.
There's plenty of questions. I know it's late for you.
All right. Yeah, let's take another question.
I'm not gonna. I mean, if you can't, then you can't.
Let's take another question.
Nicole wants. Okay, first of all, Spiro asked, "What product were we talking about?" Spiro, it's called Tangy Tangerine. If you look in the description, you'll see the Tangy Tangerine living, and you can learn all about it. Nicole asks, can we talk about parasites? I have a cat with worms. Well, that's maybe a doc thing.
That's a doc question, but parasites are, that's one of the things that it's a jungle out there. Everything's eating everything else. Everybody wants to eat us, and we want to eat them, and they're parasites. I had a dog with parasites, by the way. It was awful.
73-year-old that had a stroke, cell damage, still in a chair, wondering if testosterone and stem cell will replenish.
I wouldn't mess with testosterone, but testosterone is interesting because you can't just use testosterone. Remember, we were talking about the network, the web. Hormones are webbed. You can't just take one hormone and not expect to impact the entire web, including your estrogen, your female hormone. So it's a mess if you start playing around with your testosterone. Some people do it, more power to them. As far as the stroke goes, and as far as the stem cells go, stem cells require what's called a niche. That means they have to have a home in order to embed. And the system has to be ready for the stem cells. So you're not going to get the greatest benefit from stem cells if you're really, really decrepit. It sounds like he might be. What I'd be doing is I'd be doing the Mighty 90 essential nutrients. I would be doing a lot of protein powders, TMR shake, whey protein. And I don't know if he can exercise. He said he's in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
Anything you do to exercise, I know, I don't know if he's paralyzed or to what extent he can exercise, but exercise is very important, whatever you can do. I don't know how bad the stroke is. Listen, heart attacks are bad. Cancer's bad. There's lots of bad things that can happen to you. But a stroke strikes me as being the ultimate nightmare. And I have such sympathy for people who have strokes. I have a friend now. He's 74, 75, and he can't use his arm. These are the things that happen. It's really awful.
I hear if you fast for 3 days, your stem cells start to regenerate.
Well, fasting is a great way to regenerate stem cells. But if he's if he's fallen apart this badly, he's got bigger fish to fry than just stem cells. You got to make sure the body is conducive, the tissue is conducive to supporting the stem cells. So you can't just put stem cells into a system, especially into a decrepit system or a degenerated system. So what I would be doing is I'd be building a system up and maybe do stem cells with it. Testosterone I would be a little bit careful with, but maybe you want to do that too. The point is you want to build your body with nutrition and with exercise and with not putting the bad stuff in. If you are doing the bad stuff, sugar or cigarette, I don't know what he's doing, but drugs, those will slow everything down. It's a bigger project. He's 73 or 78?
73.
Okay, so you're still young enough, but it's a bigger project than just taking stem cells and testosterone. And unfortunately, the medical model, the medical paradigm is not equipped to help you. They're only equipped to do things like stem cells and testosterone. They're not really equipped to help you where you need to be helped, which is in anabolism. And so are there other questions? Because I'm going to finish up with this.
I have one last question after you finish up.
Okay, so one of the ways you can break down this, we're talking about simplifying everything. One of the best ways to simplify everything is into anabolism and catabolism, right? Anabolism, you've heard of anabolic steroids, right? Anabolism means to build. Catabolism means to break down. The body is in a constant balance of anabolism and catabolism. When you're young and healthy, what do you think you're doing more of?
Anabolizing.
When you're old and degenerated, what do you think you're doing more of?
Catabolizing.
Correct. So what you want to do is you want to reverse that. You want to go back into anabolism. There's lots of ways to do that. The medical model is not equipped to do that for you. But there's a lot of ways to go back into anabolism. You know, it's like you have a business. When you have a business, AJ, right? You're making money, you're selling, you're making money, you're spending money, right?
Right.
Making money, ideal circumstances, you're making more than you're selling or making more than you're spending, right? If you're spending more than you're making, they say you're what? In the red.
Right.
You're making more than you're spending, making more than you're spending, you're what? In the black. What do you want to be? In the black or in the red? Obviously in the black. Mm-hmm. Being in the black is like being net anabolic. You're always spending, you're always making, but you want to be net in the black. You're always breaking down, you're always building up, but you want to be net anabolic. So you want to drive the equation from catabolic to anabolic. You want to go from reverse. You're going this way. Breaking down, you want to reverse that and build up. That's why nutrition is so important. That's why not putting anything that supports, that increases catabolism, like sugar and drugs and alcohol and smoking and all the bad stuff, bad foods, etc. That's why all of that is important to avoid, because that induces catabolism. That pushes the equation this way. Protein pushes the equation this way. Exercise pushes the equation this way. Vagal tonicity, activating the vagal nerve. The parasympathetic nervous system. Gratitude, love, satisfaction, compassion, kindness. All the good stuff. Negative ions. All the good stuff drives the equation this way. That's what this gentleman has to do. That's what we all have to do.
Is this something that you could speak about on Friday and in more extent, or did you kind of
I basically said everything.
Okay,
but do you understand the logic of shifting it this way? You're going this way, anabolic to catabolic. You want to shift it that way. And the way you shift it, in chemistry we say driving the reaction. The way you drive the reaction this way is by loading things up here and pushing it. Exercise, protein, mighty 90 essential nutrients, meditation, whatever, water.
Being good thoughts.
Water. What's that? Oxygen, breathing. All the good stuff, right? All the good stuff. You're pushing it this way, and that's what this gentleman has to do.
Yeah, it sounds like a battle between good and evil.
Well, no, because catabolism is important for a couple of reasons. First of all, you get energy from catabolism. You remember, that's how you're breaking things apart. Yes, catabolism releases energy. So catabolism is very important. Plus, catabolism is out with the old, in with the new. So catabolism, it's net. It's net. It's net. In your business, you got to spend money. You got to have a business. You're not spending any money. You're spending money, but you're net in the black. Right? It's the net. That's what you're looking for.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. David says he loves you, and Texas Hill Country got a good kick out of when you were making fun of me earlier. And Eric and Becca loves the show, and Dave and Nicole. And
all right.
Last question is probably the most important question of the night.
Yeah.
Are the Knicks gonna win the NBA championship?
Are they in the championship game?
Oh, the Knicks! They got another round. They got to win this round.
The last time I followed the Knicks, they had Willis Reed and Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe and Dave DeBuscher and
Phil Jackson,
the senator guy,
Bill Bradley.
Bill Bradley. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was the last time I followed the Knicks.
Yeah, and so a woman texts me. She says, "Oh, aren't you excited about the Knicks?" I said, I've been waiting 50 years.
All right. That was the last time. I remember those years when they were, they were Willis Reed years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't get as I get older. I can't get into sports. I like watching a little football here and there, but I can't really follow sports.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani impresses me though. You ever watch him? Shohei Ohtani.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I love the way. I love hearing that ball. I love hearing the way that ball hits the bat when he hits those home runs.
Yeah.
I do enjoy that, and I like watching football a little bit, but I can't get into any sports stuff. All right,
folks.
God bless you.
We shall see you all next time.
Yeah,
thank you
that
for
was fun,
joining.
AJ. We'll do it again, and then Friday, Pharmacist Friday.
Pharmacist Friday.